I now call this Bryan Independent School District meeting to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 12 o'clock noon. I wish to extend a welcome to everyone present. I ask that you please turn off the sound on all electronic devices. And I see we've got a scout out there in the audience, and is this for a merit badge maybe? Or, oh, okay.
Hey.
He looks excited.
Yeah, I was a scout, and I had to do the same kind of stuff. So welcome. I'm going to give you some bad news, though. Here in a little bit, we're going to go into executive session. That means we're going to be out of sight for a while, so you still get credit. And if you want to stick around, we will have an open session after that, but I can't predict exactly how long that will be, so I just wanted to warn you about that.
But you'd sign something for him now if you need.
Yeah. We'll vouch for you.
I'll sign it for you.
Not you.
So anyway, I need to ask if there's any public comments. None? Okay, so I will just say for future reference that if anybody does want to make comments about an agenda item or at our main meeting on the third, generally on the third Monday, that you can also make comments on non-agenda items. So having said that, the board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items. They're actually all listed on the agenda. I won't go through all of them. They are authorized by Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, .071, .074, .0821, .072, and .087. No voting will take place in closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will occur after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. The time is now 12:02. The board reconvened in open session at 2:12.
It's in there?
No action was taken in closed session. Our next item is information item, bond steering committee update. Dr. Merrill and whoever else you got.
She's got. I think she's going to put her stuff down and join us. We appreciate the opportunity to come back in. We're going to move relatively quickly, but please, at any point, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop and ask, and we'll be happy to walk you through it. As you're aware, we've been meeting for many, many months now, and we appreciate the opportunity to come in last month and with our citizens and share out the recommendation, very much so. You can tell from the committee's conversation they were very, very excited about the work that had been done, and they were excited to be able to make those presentations. We appreciate so much the board's trust in allowing us to put the committee together and work through that process. I appreciate my guys to my left and my right and all of the hard work that they put into it. The committee was incredible. They brought their opinions and they brought their thoughts and their attendance week in and week out, and it's not the first time that the committee like this has done that. They are staunch supporters of Bryan ISD, and I would even go back to Mr. Mervish when he opened up. The taxpayer was in the room at every given moment. And not only kind of unspoken, but at the first meeting, Mr. Mervish stood up and made it very clear that we are not only representing ourselves, but we're representing the taxpayers in every decision that we make, and we need to keep that into consideration. And so with that, we'll get started.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, and Superintendent Carabine. This afternoon, we're taking a moment to recap the financial information that's been shared over the past few months, specifically the distinction between our M&O tax rate and our INS tax rate. For anyone tuning in, or maybe new to the conversation, it is important to understand the difference between the two portions of the tax rate. State law imposes strict regulations on how revenue for each component can be used. For starters, each segment of the tax rate generates revenue for two different purposes. For example, the M&O rate can only be used for day-to-day operations such as salaries, benefits, general supplies, utilities, etc. And funds generated from the INS tax rate can only be used for capital projects such as new buildings, renovations through voter-approved bonds. These funds cannot be used for salaries or day-to-day operations of the district. In addition, the district cannot transfer pennies around from one portion of the tax rate to another. To provide a full picture of our debt management efforts, this timeline highlights the dates of past bond elections as well as the district's scheduled principal payments, demonstrating our ongoing commitment to fiscal responsibility. If you see here, every time you see a red arrow, it indicates the district has made a principal payment on existing bonded debt. This consistent practice has strengthened our financial position and has made it possible to pursue a $400 million bond without increasing the INS tax rate. As shown here, the school district has ample capacity within the INS tax rate. However, we are committed to being fiscally responsible by pursuing only what we can afford without increase the INS rate. As a reminder, this bond will be issued in phases, with the first and largest sale scheduled for August of 2026. As stated before, it is important to educate our taxpayers about the required ballot language, which states this is a property tax rate, the property tax increase. While the actual rate will not increase, the law requires this language. And as I've stated before, this is the projected bond issuance timeline based on current law, current property values, and existing exemptions. Bond issuances are timed for August to align with the receipt of certified property values, which are finalized at the end of July, and this ensures accurate financial planning and compliance with debt service requirements. If we need any further information regarding bond issuance cost, cash flow implementation spend down requirements, or learn about the new restrictions surrounding defeasance rules, we can certainly invite our financial advisors back for a discussion next month. So some final thoughts here. Bryan ISD does have a $400 million bond capacity without raising the INS tax rate. This reflects strong financial management and is one reason the district has good credit ratings, which help us sell bonds at lower interest rates and better terms. Another final reminder, the local operating budget is designed to support the day-to-day educational and operational needs of the district. It does not have the capacity to fund large-scale construction or renovation projects. So as a side note, 100% of the funds generated through a bond election remain under local control and are invested directly into Bryan ISD, benefiting our students, staff, and community. No major decisions related to the bond expenditures will be made without input from the Bond Oversight Committee and ultimately the approval of the Board of Trustees.
All right, just to walk down memory lane, if we could, just for a minute, and many of y'all remember this. I think Ruthie was a part of it. We had a game called Kahoot. We're not going to play Kahoot, but it turned into, I know, I'm sorry, Ruthie, highly competitive. And that's Joel Dunsworth. We grabbed that picture off the internet. So Joel, there you are, buddy. That's at Texas State. He was the gentleman that closed the meeting out, that read the poem. They did a phenomenal job, and he obviously is at Branch. When you look at what percentage of Bryan ISD students are enrolled in CTE classes, we have over 80% of it, and you'll see that reflected in the bond. What percentage of Bryan ISD secondary students are enrolled in athletics? Over 50% of our kids are in athletics. How many academic credits has Bryan Collegiate High School awarded to its students since school first opened, which obviously Bryan Collegiate's in there? They're averaging 51 credit hours the last 2 years. Thousands and thousands of credit hours for first-generation college kids is really, really remarkable, and the leading high school in the Brazos Valley, so remarkable, once again reflected in this bond. How many Bryan ISD students are expected to ride a single bus over its full lifespan? You're talking 50 kids a day, over 176 days for the lifespan of 10 to 15 years with our incredible transportation department. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids are going to be riding that bus every single day. And again, Ms. Friddle points out that we structure that debt in a way that would pay that entity, that bus off for the lifespan of that bus. We're not going to pay off that bus over 40 years. We would strategically include that to be paid off for the lifespan, as with technology as well. Based on projected enrollment and athletic participation, how many students will use the field house during its expected lifespan of 50 years? Over 1,000 kids come in and out of that field house every day. So every day you're going to have thousands of kids in and out of that field house. You multiply that out by not even 176 days like a student would be here. You're talking 200, 250 days because it's about to start. They're about to be up there for athletic practices before the start of school. You're going to have games, varsity games, JV games. You're going to have, honestly, it's rare that field house wouldn't be used. And again, our life expectancy of our current field house is 50 years. So excited to think about the per student cost just drives incredibly down when you think about what the overall cost is, but how much you're going to be using these facilities, whether it's Bryan Collegiate and the 400 students that go there and the 80,000 plus credits that they received over the course of their high school career, or whether it's the hundreds of thousands of students that are going to go through a field house or the hundreds of thousands of students that are going to ride a bus. It's an incredible investment in the future of our district, to say the least. Now, we've got 3 propositions, and we've wanted to spend just a minute talking about what that looks like. The first one, Proposition A, would be general, and it lists some of the things there. Proposition B would be athletics, and then Proposition C would be technology. And Mr. Griffin's going to talk a little bit about the process of what it looks like to build a bond and kind of what those numbers represent. And then a few months from now, what it looks like as we start to hopefully get it voted in November.
As we've talked about multiple times, we have been refining this process since day one. We identified what was necessary, and then we've just been coming steadily back over and over again What you see here is the suggested alignment from our bond counsel. And then, of course, it's up to y'all whether y'all present or how you go from that point. But I do want to remind you that the numbers and what you see here, those are the cost per square foot estimates based off of those refinements. And ultimately, that includes soft cost plus construction cost. So reality, once this proceeds, and if our taxpayers so want to entrust us with this financial aid, then we in turn will then work diligently to design and then bid the process, and we will ever vigilantly be working to get that as tight and as close and get his money. So again, we know that this money is a large sum, but reality, as I've talked about before, what we don't want to do is promise and then not have the finances to then construct what we promised, because it would affect our future for future bonding capabilities. So again, we want to make sure that we can provide what we've talked about, and that will come with the hard work further down the road.
So much of the bond, it was interesting to start and then see where we ended up, really came down to involvement. It was fun to watch the committee and the campuses really take a hard look, obviously, at MEPT, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and technology. And that is obviously a major factor in this bond. Every building in this district will be touched in some way, shape, or fashion. And then when they got through that, they really looked at our extracurriculars and then also career and technical education. And you could see the focus on that was tremendous. They really wanted to make sure our kids had just what they needed to be able to be competitive and really put them in a position to be successful after graduation. And so we're incredibly proud of the work that's been done. Incredibly proud of the conversations and the relationships that have been just cemented, and excited for the presentation. I really do think that this is a wonderful representation of a committee's work, and they're, again, having the taxpayer at the front of this conversation the entire time, I think really gave us the guidance that we needed.
Dr. Merrill, before you go, or can you go back?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
really interesting, and I like the way you've broken this down for the general, which is pretty much the one that touches every single school,
Yes, ma'am.
and the one that most parents are going to be the most interested in. That's 82%
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
bond. I like the way you've broken this down. And then athletics, you'd think it'd be more of a percentage, but it's only 17%, yet a lot of that 17% affects a lot more schools than you think it does, because you're talking about intermediate, middle, and high school
Yes,
for
ma'am.
things like the scoreboards.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Which will be consistent, new, high quality. You know, we don't have to worry about leasing it out for something in the scoreboard.
Right.
You know, you have to have somebody there banging on it to make it work. Not that I ever experienced that. And so I like the way you've broken this down. I would think that technology would be more than 1%, but that also shows how much we've already done
Yes,
and
ma'am.
worked with technology to get us up to the 21st century. So anyway, I just think that's really interesting, the way that it's broken out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? This is not an action item, but this is one more chance for anybody in the audience or for the board to ask questions, because some of the committee members got a little more information over time, and so make sure that anybody that felt like they didn't get all the answers to their questions could have one more chance.
Ms. Friddle, can I just ask one question? I just want to make sure. So even though we're potentially borrowing $400 million, and on the ballot, it's going to say that this is a tax rate increase, in actuality.
Just a tax increase.
Tax increase, sorry. It is not. Is that, help me walk through that, I guess. From a voter standpoint, if I see that it's a property tax increase.
Yes, sir, yes. That is a required ballot language, whether or not the the tax rate goes up, because in essence, if we were to not pass the bond, then we would have to take the tax rate down. So we have to be able to say that.
Okay.
That is required language. But
And the reason, just to clarify, because I know what you're asking, is either we go down or we keep it the same. So I think that's why the legislature requires us,
That's
because we would have to give a reduction if we didn't pass a bond, correct? Because we can't keep the extra money. So,
or if we didn't have a board-approved defeasance to stabilize the tax rate and keep,
Okay.
and keep it stable. Yeah,
So-
which is what we have done historically in order to keep, in order to have that bond capacity. It's
Okay.
because of those defeasances, those principal payments that we've made that have given us the opportunity to be here today.
so we wouldn't have to give
Back to that slide with the red arrows.
so we wouldn't have to give a refund. I mean, we wouldn't have to bring the tax rate down. We could just keep paying our debt down.
Absolutely, yes, we can.
So to that point, it really isn't a tax increase, because we would just keep it the same. It's
That's-
not, I want the public to understand, it's not either we do a bond and we keep it the same, or we don't do a bond and your tax rate goes down. We would just continue managing the money very, very well, like y'all
You
have done a
continue
great
to
job.
use that for principal reduction.
That is correct. As you can see here on this slide, every time you see a red arrow, we have avoided millions and millions of dollars in interest simply by defeasing debt or making principal payments on that mortgage, so to speak. So we have avoided interest, millions of dollars in interest. So keeping a stable rate has been the philosophy of the school district, and it's because of that practice that we have the ability to be here today and to be able to pursue a $400 million bond without an increase to our tax rate.
Even though it's going to say on the ballot that it is.
Yes, and that is
Okay.
simply an education piece. It is very important, especially if you're new or you're tuning into this conversation brand new. It's very important to understand that, community, taxpayers, staff, employees, please know that when you do come up to the ballot, you will see that in bold lettering. This is a tax increase. And as we have explained today and several times before, this will not increase the INS tax rate. That is required ballot language. That's not anything that we can do anything about. We have, during our bond committee here at several board meetings, we have explained that. So please know, community, if you're new or you're just tuning into this conversation, please know that you will see that ballot language, but there will be no increase to the tax rate.
And that's why I wanted to clarify that when our public, especially our new people, see that it's not an either or. I just want to say that one more time. It is not, you pass the bond and we keep it the same, or you defeat the bond and you're not going to get a tax decrease necessarily. We would simply use it to keep paying for a future bond when we're ready to run it again. So I don't want people to think that they're making that decision, that election on whether they want their taxes to go down and not pass the bond, or keep it the same by passing it.
That
So,
is correct.
thank
Yes,
you.
sir. It has been the philosophy of the district to keep that tax rate stable so that we continue to make those principal payments.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And the language of the tax increase is a state law, a
Yes, ma'am.
state requirement. So all districts have to have that.
That is statewide, yes, ma'am.
Right.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you very
Thank you.
much for your presentation. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. The board may remove any item from the consent agenda if applicable. If there are none, well, let me stop there. I'm sorry, does anybody want to remove something from the consent agenda?
No, sir. Mr. Stasny, I move approval of all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Ms. Benford. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I will say that is unanimous, 6-0, with one absence. All right. Moving down to action items, 8A, consider approval of student code of conduct for the 2025-26 school year, including statewide ban on student use of personal communication devices during the school day. And our presenter is Dr. Merrill, Dr. Ibarra, Director of School Leadership, Linda Montoya, Director of School Leadership, Dr. Leslie Holtkamp, and I don't know, maybe got some others here.
We got a whole bunch of folks here. Yeah, they're in the back. They'll be coming up here shortly. We appreciate the opportunity to come in again. This is a yearly thing where we talk about code of conduct and what it looks like, and this year is no different. And it does have some significant changes, as we've already kind of learned about, that we'll go through pretty quickly, but we're excited to be able to share it. Some general updates to the Code of Conduct. There is a streamlining of language, a removal of any redundant language, and then adding clarifying language, for example, prohibits unauthorized use of artificial intelligence. And then it addresses new provisions from the 89th legislature. Parent involvement when students are placed in DAP. This is a change, although we've sort of even been doing this to some degree with some of the placements. This is not anything that's not new to us, but it's a new law, obviously, new part of the Code of Conduct. But parents of students placed in DAP or expelled may request a behavioral agreement. And following the agreement can reduce the disciplinary term, but not the placement type. And all that means is it's a possible reduction in days if they put that behavioral agreement in place. And again, for certain offenses, we already had this in place for various things we had worked out with DAP. So again, if they had gone for a certain behavioral incident, they were offered it. In this case, it's just expanding it. Reduction is at the discretion of the administration and requires full compliance of that behavioral agreement. Updates again to the suspension. Out-of-school suspension may not exceed 3 days. That's been the practice forever, but there it is. In-school suspension ISS is no longer subject to any limit. That is a change. I would point out to the board that we are moving from the language of DMC and DMC 1 and 2 to ISS, and that is in alignment with what the state does. So you will hear it, I guess, if any chance we come in, we'll talk about ISS, not DMC. However, the principal and appropriate administrator shall review the ISS placement of a student at least once every 10 school days to evaluate the educational progress of the student and to determine if continued ISS is appropriate. So you can tell they put a lot more parameters on a lengthy placement. And again, that makes sense because they're not in instruction. They're out of the classroom and they're in in-school suspension room. And another change that we used to DOI, but we're no longer going to be able to District of Innovate, is a first-time offense of possession or use of nicotine-delivered product or e-cigarette. This is going to be a big change. It may place a student in a discipline alternative education program for the first-time offense of possession or use of a nicotine delivery product or an e-cigarette. Again, and if the student who possesses or uses the e-cigarette is not placed in a DAP educational program for the first-time offense, the student shall be placed in school suspension for a period of at least 10 school days. So that's saying it's mandatory to either place them at a DAP or they're going to go for 10 days into ISS. And so the legislature has taken a real hard stance on e-cigarettes. We agree. We don't want them in our buildings. They have no place. And so that will be the work of our principals to really make sure that they're educating our students because they knew they would get consequences. I don't think they've always understood that they're going to be this severe.
Pretty severe now.
Yeah, and so they are going to have class meetings at the beginning of school, and we do that every year to talk about changes in dress code and anything else, and this would be the code of conduct, so this is going to be discussed very early on.
Dr. Merrill, before we move on, I'm so sorry, if I may ask you something about the ISS not having a limit anymore. Mm-hmm. So what is the limit now?
Well, before we were going to limit it substantially. So in years past, it had been up to 30 days, but we're not doing that now. So this obviously has taken the cap off, and so we've got some internal conversations.
And this is from
from the state.
We're forced to do this.
We're forced.
I just want to make that clear that it's not. We're not making this decision unilaterally. This is something that we must do in order to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's, I was going to ask, is there a way so that parents understand whether we feel it's appropriate, maybe we feel it's too much, maybe we feel like it's not too much, whatever the case may be, that we put, say, for instance, like first-time offense, possession, use, talking about vaping, placed in in-school suspension for a period of at least 10 school days as per state law, and literally name it so that if parents have a problem, we can explain to them, and then we can, if they, they can refer to it. Not that we say, well, just go look at state law, but it does explain that some of these things we don't have control of.
Exactly.
Yeah, so obviously with any type of disciplinary consequence, the assistant principals will be calling home, so there'll be parent contact made. So for that is a great way to explain it for 10 days. That's going to be obviously 2 weeks at least out of normal classroom instruction. So that's a substantial placement, to be completely honest. And so obviously you'll need to communicate that to the parent, and they'll help them understand what's going on.
So Brian, when it says the principal or the appropriate administrator, who is that person?
Assistant principal.
And so after 10 days, they can go and evaluate that student and determine if the suspension is lifted, they go back to class or what?
Yes, ma'am.
Because my problem is, I mean, and I understand it's the law, but I look at this and they were just so, that's just saying don't come to school anymore. That's what that's saying basically, because if you put a child in there and no one comes and evaluates me, or they come and evaluate me and they're busy, they don't have time, I sit there. Eventually, I'm not coming back. And so that's no child in a seat. So that's a hardship for the district. That hurts us.
Yes, ma'am. Each of the secondary campuses where this is primarily going to be most likely impacted has an associate principal. And so I'm confident that the principal with the associate principal for discipline is going to take a hard look at this. And I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of them. They're sitting behind me, but just knowing the way that they operate, that's going to be the way that it happens. And again, our principals do an incredible job of enforcing and the code of conduct and just the building in general, making sure that not only are we front-loading the expectations and what we expect of the students, how to behave from the moment they get on the bus to the minute that they leave. And our teachers do a phenomenal job. And then they also are working with and instructing when they violate the code of conduct. That's what a referral is, right? And so they'll talk with them about how to learn from this and not just simply assign consequences to it. There's a growth moment. Now, part of that is, consequences sort of reinforce the learning in a lot of cases. And so they will measure that at the same time, really considering whether or not the student's academic success is in jeopardy. And so they are going to monitor this because they want to be successful and they want the student to be successful on state accountability and just in life. And so they're really going to monitor that, I think, very, very heavily.
And I'm sorry to get into the weeds too much, Dr. Merrill, but would you explain, my concern is if you have unequal treatment, you have one principal that says you're going to go for 60 days, and another principal that says you're going to go for 3 days. I know we have that problem all the time. And I know it's hard also to come in and say you're going to have mandatory. If you do it's, but how do we keep from having disparities like that? And
Sure.
What is the average? Do you have an average on how long they're placed in ISS?
I don't have an average of how long they're placed in ISS, and I don't want to speak for the principals, but I can tell you that they do alignment. So when they're talking, one of the jobs of the associate principal is to align. So they would spend time talking with the other APs who are administering consequences to make sure that they're fair, that they're equal. In addition, we have assistant principal PLCs where those kind of conversations happen as well. And so and typically if a student, now this is ISS, if it was DMC2, we would get those requests and we would look at them to make sure that they were appropriate and that they were, equal among campuses and then even between the same campus. So again, we won't get those, but it will be the job of the principal to make sure that that's taking place.
So will you get again, my concern, like Ms. Benford's, is if you get somebody that's stuck in there, you can really do a lot of harm. And I understand that these children are disruptive, probably. They wouldn't be in ISS if they weren't disrupting the other 20 kids. We got to look at their education as well. But I do have concerns that you lose a child in the shuffle, especially. I always felt really good that you guys had your eyes over the whole system anyway. So if you saw an anomaly, it would come to your attention regularly and automatically. So it is a concern to me that may not necessarily happen now, or it won't happen. You won't see it.
Right. I want to clarify two things. One, if it's an e-cigarette, also known as a vape, it's a minimum of 10 days. You can't get out early. If you choose to do more, for whatever reason that might be, you have to review it 10 days. And what I understand that the principals do quite well is they calibrate with their teams. So they'll sit down, especially if they have a new administrator, to say, let's look at offenses, let's look at consequences, length of stay, placement, et cetera, so that we're consistent. To your point, both of you make a valid point. So the other thing is, I think it's going to be critical that if there's an assignment for 10 days outside of the e-cigarette, because it has to be at least 10 days, but for some other offense, that we're consistent. So we don't want to pit one school against another school. So with those professional learning communities, the principals talk with each other so that they make sure that the consequences are matching the offense as much as possible and within reason when it comes to alignment. So it is very important to our principals, and they're here today. They can elaborate when they come to the podium, but they are very collaborative to address your point.
The kids will talk to, right? So
Oh, yeah.
there's some
You
internal.
got 3 days, I got 100.
Kids and parents will be the first.
There's
to
some
say.
internal accountability that takes place that they're very familiar with, and they'll speak up. I will say this, just to point out, most of the time it's 1 to 3 days, Mr. Gonzalez.
Okay.
So when you think of ISS, that's why it's even odd that we're saying ISS more than 10 days, because when we all grew up in being assistant principals, it was always 3 days. You didn't extend beyond that. And so this idea that it's going to be 10 days is like, okay, I kind of have to pause just a second, because this is really, it never has happened.
It's not
Yeah.
a common,
No, it never did. And so now, instead of it just being, you could suspend for 3 days and then 3 days of ISS, now there's a whole different system in place.
Okay.
And again, we're not jumping to the most restrictive situation
Okay.
where you're assigning 40, 50. That's not what we're
That's
doing.
what, Miss
No.
Layton used to send my kids away for months
Months
on
on
end.
end,
so-
yeah.
No, kidding. But that is, when you read this, it kind of seems
Oh,
like
it's
you're going to
terrifying.
throw 10 days at them,
Yeah.
and then we'll adjust from there. So
no.
I thank you for making that point,
Yeah,
that it is
the
not.
e-cigarette is the only
have
one that's
to.
defined.
Yes, sir.
The other ones are our discretion, and so
Okay.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's 1 to 3 days typically.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, and I'm going to bring us to House Bill 1481, and this is the new Texas law banning cell phones and other personal communication devices, which include smartwatches, earbuds, tablets, and laptops, and this is in public school during the school day, which is bell to bell. And this affects every Bryan ISD student, and this will start on the first day of school on August 13th. And this also includes, the law also includes that we must have defined consequences in our student code of conduct by the beginning of the school year. So I know we've all seen on news channels and social media all of the information that has come out about the cell phone ban. But TEA has also updated some implementation guidelines, saying, that we must adopt a policy, and in adopting the policy, districts must authorize use if a student has a specific, any kind of a medical issue that they must be able to use their phone, then that it has to be documented by a medical doctor and placed in either their 504 plan or their IEP. And the school districts have the flexibility on how to secure the devices. And on June 20th, this House bill was signed into law, and that school boards have 90 days to adopt the cell phone policy. So a little bit about the timeline. So like I said, June 20th, Governor Abbott signed House Bill 1481. In July, here in the district, we've been refining the student code of conduct. We've gotten feedback from parents, administrators, and teachers about the cell phone policy and consequences. And we had a draft policy, FNC local, and the board approved that on July 21st. We've been communicating out to parents, that this is coming, starting the beginning of the school year. And then today, we're here to consider approval of the student code of conduct, and this will include the consequences in regards to cell phones.
Okay, just briefly, because we've already covered this before, and thank you, Mrs. Montoya. The device itself is pretty broad. It's just anything that's capable of electronic communication. And I think we've pretty much understand what that is at this point. The Board of Trustees, as you know, had an option either to prohibit them from being brought on property at all, or to allow them to be stored while they were on property. And in alignment, thank you, the board, with the Parent Advisory Committee and with campus and district administrators, the board voted with FNCE local to move towards storing the devices rather than a full prohibition of bringing them on the property. I also want to make one note that I neglected to make at the last meeting. This House bill also removed any fines that can be assessed to students for having those devices confiscated. Previously in statute, you could fine up to $15. That has been stricken from the statute. You can no longer do any fines for confiscation of cell phone devices or other devices. Once again, the board approved FNCE local, which put those provisions in place. This is why it will begin with the first day of school, that the items must be stored during the school day, and that is bell to bell. So they can have them before school during breakfast, and they can have them after school with athletic activities or wherever else they're at after school doing activities and volunteering. But during the school day must be off in your backpack, in your purse, in storage somewhere where you're not pulling it out. And as stated previously, and I know we're anxiously, I think people are anxiously waiting what's going to happen, how will we determine what those consequences are? So I'd like to invite Dr. Leslie Holtkamp, as well as our campus administrators, because they worked as a team to pull all of this information together so that we were absolutely consistent and in alignment.
Dr. Barton, I just want to
Sir.
confirm to parents and students that during the school day includes in between classes,
It
includes
does.
lunch,
It
includes
lunch.
recess.
It does. And in fact, if you're on a field trip, it includes on a field trip during
okay.
the school day.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Ouch. Okay.
And
Now,
one
outside of
other-
it,
Yes.
absolutely.
One other point of clarification, when we say locked away, such as a backpack and handbag, et cetera, that means not on their person. So not in their pocket, not in their jacket, not on their person. Correct? Is that what you've understood?
Is that how we are? That is the intent.
Yes. So we don't want to see them or hear them turned off, put away, except for before school or after school.
So is there consequences if they keep ringing? I mean, so if they're ringing in a backpack, it's the same as having it out. Is that how we're going to treat that?
No.
No? Okay.
So that's what we're going to talk about.
Thank you. Okay, I will
If
wait
it's
for this
ringing,
presentation.
I'm sorry, if it's ringing, yes, that is
Okay.
disruption. But if it's in their backpack, no.
Gotcha. Yes,
No
ma'am.
disruption. Okay, so my name is Leslie Holtkamp, and you may have associated me with the CNI team. And I have been with the CNI team for 11 years. Last year, I started supporting middle school campuses, and this year, I'm now supporting these principals here, the high school principals, and 2 high school principals, and the middle school principals, and working with school leadership. So today, I wanted to send out a big brag to this team. Ms. Layton from Rudder High School, Dr. Greg Boheis from Bryan High School, Becky Luna, SFA, and Ms. Sarah Rueda at Davila have all been working very hard in developing our implementation plan for our communication devices. And we started by looking at different school districts across the state of Texas and what they're doing. So we looked closely at them and worked on developing an implementation plan that's fair and consistent for our district. I know Ms. Montoya reached out to her principals that she supervises, and we also reached out to other principals so that all principals had input in the process. I wanted to just start by looking at historical perspective on what we did last year and previous years regarding electronic devices or communication devices. And I'd asked Rachel Layton if she would share what they did at the high school, and Ms. Rueda is going to share what they did at middle schools.
All right, thank you. So last year and years previously, obviously cell phones were not okay when they disrupted learning. And so the first 2 times that they had them out or they rang or anything like that, it was a warning from the teacher. We have a system called Branching Minds, and that is where that is documented so that we can see if cell phones have been a continuing issue for the student. And so that would be documented in Branching Minds. The 3rd time in that class, a student had an issue with a cell phone. Either it was out, texting, the various ways it can be used. that phone was collected by the teacher and a parent contact was made. What we sometimes dealt with was students did not always want to turn the cell phone over. And so when that happened, the teacher would call for assistance from an administrator, and then the administrator would go to the classroom and would bring the student with them with the phone. And because at that point, you're really looking at more non-compliance issue in the classroom as well as the cell phone issue. And at that point, they could get something from an after-school detention, ISS, and then hopefully it doesn't go there, but sometimes to out-of-school suspension, but just kind of depending on the severity of it, and then had the student ever been in trouble before. And so historically, that is how we handled the cell phones in the past.
And in middle school, it was done very similarly. So cell phones were not allowed during the instructional time, so that meant they could use their cell phone before school, after school, or during lunches. Again, this is last year what we had done. If the cell phone was used during instructional times, then we were able to pick it up. We did have a parent conference. We did charge the $15 when they collected the cell phone at the end of the day. Again, so students who refused to turn over the cell phone were assigned ISS. Those that refused to go to ISS were then suspended. But very similar to kind of what the high school did, where during the school instructional time that cell phones were not to be used.
Dr. Boheis is going to talk about our proposed implementation plan for our district.
So getting into the plan that we have, one that we've aligned with across all of our campuses is that we want our staff to understand that it's the administrator's responsibility if there is an incident, so that we're having to take those phones. Our goal is that we don't have to take a student phone. We know that we want them to be able to keep it within whatever storage that they have with them, their backpack, purse. So our goal is to make that happen through educating our students. And so one of the methodologies that we're going to use is to have our teachers on that first day talk with the students about the expectation and rules that are in place. When we do come back to school next Wednesday with our students, we're going to give them time to acclimate. And so we want to make sure that we have class meetings with our students so that they understand that when this policy goes into place, what those expectations are, and then what the result may be should there be a violation of that policy. We have different ways that we may be doing that on the 18th. And so some campuses are having an assembly. At Bryan High School, I will be making a video that will go out to all students. My plan with that is that if a student is coming to us in October, November, even into the next semester, that we're going to have a video that they can watch and that we can verify that the student has seen the video to understand our expectations. Once we've reached the 18th, and we are able to have those class meetings with our students, the policy does go into place. That very first offense that comes up is a referral into the system, and that referral will notify the parent that there has been some type of incident at the school. The student will receive a warning. The expectation is then that the student's administrator assigned to them will communicate home to indicate that a warning was given. After that first incident, communication devices will be collected from the student. And so each campus has been working with their administrative team so that we have a policy in place that we know what that looks like. It does gradually increase on what that consequence could look like. So that second incident and that third incident, the phones are taken up, and then the student is able to pick up that device at the end of the day. For the 30 minutes after school is over, there will be a time period. And so during the day, if it has been taken up, we don't want it to disrupt the learning environment of the classroom. So if there's a call made to an administrator, and AP, principal, will go to the classroom, they'll ask the student to come out into the hall to turn that phone over. And then we have a verification process where a student and the staff member is signing off that the phone has been taken. When a student is able to pick up that device in the afternoon, they are signing off that they have picked up their device. Once they've reached the fourth and fifth incident, at that time, a parent will be required to come and pick up that phone after school hours. We understand that there are going to have to be differentiated approaches with fine arts, with athletics. And so we're going to work with our families based on the events that we do have taking place. Again, our goal is to not keep the phones. We want the phones to get back to the students and to the parents so that they have those devices when they're leaving our campuses.
Dr. Bohais, I'm sorry, go ahead. I should wait for this wonderful presentation. I apologize. Go ahead.
Which we're hoping it doesn't reach a sixth offense and more. Again, we reach a point where, is it a cell phone or is it a non-compliance? Because we've now gotten to a point where we're at a sixth, seventh, or repeated offenses. And so at that point, there are notions of after-school detention that take place, in-school suspension. And then repeated offenses could result in increased days of those. But again, our hope is that students are not reaching that level.
Okay, I think we can all agree that it's really important that we ease the anxiety and the questions that the community and parents have. So moving forward, Bryan ISD is developing a comprehensive list of frequently asked questions that will be posted on our website. But you'll see on the screen the top 4 that we've received so far. So where will devices be collected and stored? And that's going to depend on campus and what works for each principal and campus administrative team, but they will be secured in a location that is locked, whether that's a safe, a file cabinet, whatever that may be. Parents are really concerned about how do they get in touch with their students during the school day, and so most of us went to school pre-cell phones, and our parents still got in touch with us, but each classroom and office is still equipped with a landline, so we're going to make sure that parents can still communicate with their students. This law does not apply before and after school, so we do encourage students to touch base with their parents before that instructional bell in the morning and then obviously after school, especially in terms of extracurricular activities. And then the big question, what happens if a device is lost or damaged? And then Bryan ISD is not going to be liable for that, but we are going to take very extra care of the devices that are collected and put those in the secure location.
May I, first of all, Ms. Layton, thank you for always taking my brunt of my jokes for Trey and Bella. I don't want you to forget about them. So I would just like to thank y'all for putting the disciplinary procedure in place. You know, some people may say it's a little lenient, they don't get in trouble till further down, but you know, as you said, we didn't grow up with phones, but our children these days, it is a part of them. So it's not going to be an easy transition, I wouldn't think. And I appreciate that it does get harder and harder to the point where you're like, look, you're non-compliant. You're not going to do it, and we're going to have to step it up. But I really appreciate the foresight that went into this to make sure it's not punitive, to not really just come down on our students unnecessarily. But I think y'all have done a really good job at ramping it up. You know, you get the slaps on the hand a few times, and mom and dad got to get involved, and then there's real consequences. So I just wanted to tell you thank you. I do appreciate that. I know a lot of the parents have expressed concerns about such a radical policy or what their kids are used to and what the parents are used to. And again, I just want to say thank you.
And then to round us out, so the question is does this law apply to staff members? While as professionals, the new cell phone law does not apply to staff. You know, and staff and educators are expected to model appropriate and professional use of that technology. So there are times when technology use, you know, that we're talking about is acceptable. That could be accessing instructional materials. You know, we all have to log into the Duo authenticator thing every day, managing classroom technology or tools. You know, I think Mr. Gonzalez, you mentioned about a field trip earlier. You know, teachers will have the ability to take attendance straight from their cell phone on a field trip. Communicating with administrators, matters pertaining to school safety, or documenting learning for district-approved social media. And of course, then we have unacceptable times where the use is not really acceptable. So personal messaging, calls, or browsing during instruction, usage that distracts from supervision or instruction or student engagement, or of course, filming or photographing students without parent consent. You know, we all want to be able to tell our stories. So that last bullet point there, you know, a great example would be the cheer coach. You know, we want the cheer coach to be, you know, telling the story of the organization and being able to post to social media during her conference period or before and after school.
And this is not a new, Ginger told me this is not a new policy for our
This is
staff.
not, there is language, Mr. Gonzalez, in our employee handbook, and as we have been onboarding new employees for new employee orientation, the ladies in my office have been talking to employees and reminding them about cell phone usage and what that looks like and what it should not look like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you didn't introduce yourself, but the person that just talked about staff use is over most of them because he's our HR director.
Yes, ma'am.
Tommy Roberts.
Yes.
So it's appropriate for you to be representing the issues with staff. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, two things real quick. Of course, I was a teacher and a coach and a AP before cell phones when we let kids have them. And then we had some kind of over-the-top discipline code of conduct for them. And then it was kind of like anything goes. If you're a good instructor and you're a good teacher, cell phone usage in your room was probably never an issue. And that's what we expect anyway, now that it won't be used in your room, but we do expect our teachers to use the golden rule. You treat students like you would want your own children treated. And the same thing with, when you're dealing with a parent, and because this is a real learning curve for them, we want all our staff, administration, not to, like you say, and I think our code of conduct expresses that. This is not a gotcha thing. We might be tweaking things, but again, this is a state law that we have to abide by. And we might have eased them out if we thought it was not necessary in our ISD, but we would have never gone to this kind of extreme for our parents and students all at one time. But because we have to, we're trying to do it with as much grace as we can. And I think that having them available to themselves and their parents by saying, okay, you just can't have them seen or used from bell to bell, is the fairest thing that we can do with what we've been given to do as administrators. And, we want our students to comply, even though it's like be obedient. Well, they have to because it's the law. And we have to do what we have to do as administrators because it's the law. But I think our ISD is being very fair about our attitude. We want to help parents. We want to help coaches. We want to help everybody with this issue. And something that we talked about a minute ago, we said that over 80% of our students are in career and technology. We said that and it's probably closer to 60% of our students are in athletics. If I'm a teacher and I have the quarterback in my room and he accidentally looks at his phone for whatever reason, besides probably contacting the parents and doing what I have to administratively, I call the coach and I let the coach know, hey, this is an accident, I'm sure of it, but maybe if you could remind him, it would help it not happen again. And so I am like the grandmother or the big sister to a lot of people in our district, and I would suggest to them that they also let somebody on campus that's very involved with that child that may be habitually forgetting either their CTE person that they have to be eligible for, their cheer sponsor, their choir director, somebody who's got a lot of good influence on that child, remind that person that they can help remind their all-state bass choir guy, well, it could be a girl, but guy, that they need to remember the rules. So anyway, just wanted to throw those two things in.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. I know this starts the first day of school. We don't want to see or hear the phone. It has to be locked away in a backpack, et cetera. But I do recall that you guys talked about we start school on a Wednesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're doing your grade level assemblies, you're reminding them of all the rules, not just cell phones, but IDs, dress code, et cetera. Is it a true statement that you landed those first 3 days as you train up the kids and you make this transition? It's a warning. Do any one of you want to speak to that, just so the parents understand? They've got a 3-day, I mean, they're not allowed to use the phones at all, I'm not saying that, but warning, warning, warning. And then that Monday, we go full force with the.
So that first 3 days coincides with when we allow and help kids get to class with tardies. And so we typically don't start any consequences for tardies until that Monday. Also, you can have new students coming in, so we're still making IDs at that point. And so typically all of that is taken care of by that Monday. And so this is just going to go with a new system now to go with the other things that we work with the kids, obviously trying to get them. We're at different buildings at Rudder. If you're out in the ag building, you know, some kids don't even know there's a building out there. And so we're working with tardies and we're working with IDs at that point. And so we will also be talking about the no cell phones. And then the Monday, like with all the other things, tardies, you know, no cell phones, and the consequences will start. And so I know with the kids, while we talk about not having ISS and different things 5 and 6 down, I can promise you taking that cell phone from that kid is probably the biggest consequence they can receive. So
Yeah.
that is going to be very effective.
Yes.
So I know the policy, we talk about cell phones, but it's any electronic device. Is that correct, Barbara?
And laptops.
Because I'd be one of those kids that would say, okay, I can't have my cell phone, but I got my tablet. So I think we better.
I thought you'd bring your pager.
Hey, that too.
That is
Whatever.
correct. It's any communication device.
Any communication.
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
think we need to make sure we tell them, because a lot of kids don't have, some kids don't have a cell phone. Some just have the little tablets and the iPads and whatever those things they have.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think it needs to be made clear that, I mean, I'm sure y'all will, but that it's the sound even, because even I think my kids always have it on silent because they don't want me to know when they're getting a message. But, you know, I would hate to just have people getting in trouble for not realizing it's ringing or it's dinging or whatever. So I'm sure y'all will make that amply clear to them that it's any kind of indication that there is a device in there is going to be the problem.
Yes, the suggestion is going to be that you power off your cell phone, but if it's put away and it doesn't make a sound, we're going to consider that non-disruptive.
Okay. Fair enough.
Well, good luck on those warnings, because if my kids,
Thank
my
you.
kids, if they were going to school still, which is they're all grown, and he said, that's only warnings. I mean, I don't care how many warnings I get. So that first day's going to be, yeah, okay, warn me again. So,
I'd be picking them up every day with those phones up for a while. So.
well, anyway, good luck with that. Hopefully you'll get good compliance.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for your support.
I agree that we need to do the warnings. That's
Yes.
important.
Thank you to the principals. They spent an inordinate amount of time on this, and we did talk about the good from all of this. I can
Yeah.
confess that I am distracted by my phone
I
at
agree.
times. So I think there will be a lot of good once we settle into the new law, and that kids can be more attentive in class, and the teachers can teach without interruption. So there will be a silver lining in this. I'm optimistic about that.
And I think, I don't know that it's been made clearer, but we've talked about it as a group that, or some of us on committee, whatever, anyway, that if it's a true emergency is identified, all bets are off. The kids are going to be able to get their cell phones and call and say, I'm okay, or whatever. And that's the message that I expect. I don't think anybody on the board is going to disagree, is we're not going to say, oh, well, you know, we don't.
There's a tornado,
we
you
still-
can't
yeah,
call
we
anybody.
We still can't let you use your phone even though it's an emergency. Yes, we're gonna, I don't know if that's specifically covered by
absolutely.
that exception. but-
It is an exception. If there's a true emergency, we absolutely would encourage kids to use their device if they feel
To
compelled.
call up for.
That's why I think so many parents were happy to hear that the board adopted the policy version where it could be in the backpack and readily available should there ever be, God forbid, an emergency.
I don't
Thank you.
think on this particular item, we have a proposed motion, but it's kind of pretty simple. It's about improving the.
May I make a motion, Mr. Stasny?
Sure, go ahead.
I move approval of the Student Code of Conduct for the 2025-2026 school year, including statewide ban on student use of personal communication devices during the school day as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Ms. Benford. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All Opposed? That is a unanimous 5-0 vote, but we have missing 2 board members. But and we have only one other item, and it does not require, thank you very much, by the way. Y'all did do an awful lot of work. We appreciate that. This doesn't require board action per se, but I need to appoint somebody to be our delegate at the convention. And we have 2 people who aren't here. We could appoint them.
I say Joel and Julie. You know what? If you leave early, I would make a motion for Joel and Julie.
Does anybody want to volunteer? I've done it several times. I'd love for somebody else to have the opportunity. You've done it, I think, Felicia, haven't you?
Been the alternate or the person.
Okay. Anybody want to
Takes up
volunteer?
all the day.
Dennis, you want to do it?
You're not
Normally,
exactly
all
selling it.
that day, that's Saturday.
So you
Instead of
can
going to sessions, that's where you'll go to the,
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm not jumping
Yeah.
at it, is I don't like those sessions.
So,
I'll go.
you go, oh.
I'll go. I'm
uh-oh.
sure I got enough
Way to go, Felicia. Well, I'll be,
hours.
I nominate Felicia and
We
Mr.
don't have to
Stasny.
nominate.
does anybody want to be the alternate?
Mr. Stasny, would you like to be the alternate? You're the president.
Why are you asking me that? I just said, how many times have you done it? All right, I'll be the alternate.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes care of that. You and me are officially appointed.
Barbara got that down?
And there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at, looks like about 3:13.